have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the Q&A box and we'll bring them up at the end of the session. Our guest for today is Mr. Shantesh Row. Shantesh is a partner and the Chief Creative Officer at Slant Agency, Dubai. He has worked creatively and strategically on 500 plus brands in India and the UAE across a career that spans 25 years. Santesh was recently ranked in the top 200 LinkedIn creators globally by Favicon and is a strident voice on LinkedIn. He's also a C-suite consultant and an advisory board member and a masterclass mentor at Miles Soba IIM Indore. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming our guest speaker. The topic for today is careers in writing in the age of AI. Mr. Shantesh, welcome and the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Sugandha. Firstly, let me thank you and Shivam, as also everyone at Emeritus Careers India, for inviting me for this session. And I send a warm welcome to everyone who's attending the session as well. I hope I'm audible. Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, good evening, everyone. And today's going to be an interesting topic because before I came onto the session, I was asking Sugandha about the profile of the people who are attending, and it's a diverse set of people, and not all of you are writers. So I've kept it from a perspective of being a writer, yes, but also from a career perspective. And I will take you through a presentation which I've put in through. But before that, I'd just like to say a few things. So number one, I think I have been writing for 25 years now in advertising. I'm an advertising copywriter essentially. And it's always been a fascinating career to have for the last 25 years because it's a career that keeps you going every day. You're learning something new every day. And that is the beauty about writing, right? It's not always one job. You have so many different brands that you can work on, so many different people that you interact with, so many different customers, so many different walks of life, and so many different marketing problems to solve. So it's a very interesting line to take up, but it's also a challenging line in the sense of the length and the breadth of the field itself, right? So writing is not just one block. It is composed of a series of different blocks. And today it is even more segregated into fair amount of niches. And honestly, it's very tough sometimes to pick up a niche or say that, this is what I want to do. So how I want to keep this session is that there's a Q&A box. So you can always ask me a question in the chat or in the Q&A. From time to time between the presentation, if I pick up a question, I'll try and answer it. And we're going to have a separate Q&A after my presentation as well. Overall, we are going to be talking for about an hour. So without further ado, let me just share my screen first, and I'll start with the presentation. Hopefully, we will be able to start. I hope you can see my screen, everyone. Let me just get the presentation ready. Okay, I hope you can all see it. Just give me a thumbs up, anyone in the chat, and it's great. Okay, all right. So I have started with this slide which says, so you want to be a writer? And there's a reason why I have put that line up there, the answer which will come on the next slide. But today, particularly what we're speaking about is a two-part thing. One is the fact that what are the different careers that are available in the field of writing, one. And what is happening currently, which is definitely the last 3 or 4 months, we've seen the emergence of AI in writing. And how does that change the game these days? Or how will it change the game going ahead? That is what we're going to be focusing on. So there's some part of it which is very basic. So it's for every layman to understand. And some part of it which is probably requires a little bit of explanation from my side. But let's keep it open. I'm going to be taking questions in between as well. So let's look at that. So what's the reason why I kept this? So you want to be a writer? This gentleman on the right, who you see, is one of the most famous poets of all time. His name is Charles Bukowski, and he basically is a person who is a very observant person. He was always a very observant poet. And most of his writing, whether it was short stories or poetry, came from life. And there's a particular poem which do it. Unless it comes unmasked out of your heart and your mind and your mouth and your gut, don't do it. If you were to sit for hours staring at your computer screen or hunched over your typewriter, searching for words, don't do it. So what his poem is all about is basically about the essence of being a writer. And if you ask me, even after 25 years, it's very difficult for me to pinpoint what is it that I look for in a writer. Because a writer is a sum of many parts. There is it's not just the command of language or the ability to spin words or the ability to thread words and create a story or create an ad or create a script or anything of that sort, or even a book. But it's essentially what Bukowski says in this in this poem of his. It says, if it doesn't come bursting out of you in spite of everything. So the whole idea of being a writer is to be very in touch with, or very self-aware of what your frailties are as much as your strengths are. I think writing is an extremely challenging profession because it is a subjective profession at the end of the day. It's not like you're putting bread on the table, right? It's not sliced bread. So every piece of work that you do as a writer in any field of writing is always subjective to a certain audience. So, for example, if you go to our old times, if you go to our mythology, for example, the mythology was always told by somebody, right? A story of Ramayana was narrated, a story of Mahabharata was narrated, somebody wrote it and somebody narrated it. So you always had an audience for it. Now the audience typically in a commercial environment determines the value of the writing. So whether you're writing a novel or whether you're doing an ad or whether you're writing content, for example, content is the buzzword these days. It is all about the ability to connect with the customer or the reader or the consumer or the imbiber of what you're writing. And all of it at the end of the day has to come bursting from you, which means it has to be fairly spontaneous. There are writers who are talented from the get-go, who are sort of born to be writers, as they say. And there are some who develop it over a period of time. They don't start off as writers. But a lot is changing today, especially in the post-pandemic world. And I'll take you through a few of the observations that we have been seeing in the field of writing as well. So today what we're seeing essentially is there is a writing explosion. Pretty much everyone is a writer these days, and you may not even know it, but you're a writer. Even if you're writing an email, technically you're a writer, right? Because you are conveying a certain message to somebody else on the other side. And especially now with social media being so prevalent, everyone's creating content, whether it is a video-led content or a writing-led content or visual-led content or copy-led content, doesn't matter. You could be creating, you're creatively doing something because you're given the platforms to do it. So you could be on Instagram doing it, you could be on Snapchat doing it, you could be on TikTok doing it. What's happened is, if you look back 30 years, right, writers used to be specialized professionals. Today, because technology has put creativity in your hand, it's given creativity to your mother, it's given creativity to your father, it's given creativity to your children, it's given creativity across the board to everyone, right? The facility to use that creative tool. And which is why I make this point that everyone's a writer, or at least aspiring to be one. And LinkedIn is a great example of this today, because it's really, if you look at, a lot of people today are calling themselves either freelance writers or content creators, etc., etc. So that's the sort of mota moti, as they say, of it. It's an explosion that is happening right now. If you just look at basic stats on writing, and you understand the scale of what we're talking about. If you look at it in pure revenue terms, marketers across the world, they expect that the writing industry, and when I mean writing industry, it's the total sum of the entire writing industry. Whether it is writing for television, for films, for any sort of thing, that is what is the industry determined as, and that's apparently going to exceed close to $135 billion in another 3 or 4 years. That's massive. The second part, which we're going to talk about a little later, which is the AI-driven revenue. So today you have a lot of AI writing that's happening by writers. Where writers are using AI tools. And that itself as a content market is going to exceed around 250 billion around the same time by 2026. So you're looking at about a total revenue sort of market of close to about 400 billion, close to, if you add both the figures. That is massive. That's like a massive opportunity. The second opportunity which we are seeing is that 75% of large and medium-sized companies globally across the world are outsourcing their writing. They are outsourcing their website writing, they're outsourcing, even their CEOs are outsourcing their own writing, for example. They're working with agencies, they're working with freelancers, they're working with consultants, they're working with ghostwriters. So it's a huge amount of opportunity, but also there is a little bit of a gap in terms of how that opportunity can be met with the supply. And I'll address that in a little later and why I'm saying that. So if you look at the marketing trends over 2022 last year, the content marketing trends, so this is content marketing. So content marketing includes writing as one part of it, right? So you're seeing a lot of trust in interactive content today, right? Because you look at yourself as a consumer today. You are interacting a lot on social media with apps, etc. People are playing Candy Crush all the time. So games are big. You're taking polls of different sorts. So that's big. So that is there. Then the second one, which is very big today, is what is called the authentic or the behind the scenes content, right? So people are actually making it raw and authentic. It's almost like somebody's putting a candid camera there and going behind the scenes to show you what is happening behind the shoot, behind the restaurant review, behind anything, right? And that is a very raw way of creating content. Again, writing is part of it because what you present, what you say is all part of the writing which comes in. Then, of course, there is content that is reflecting brand values. There is funny content. We all laugh at the memes that come to us on YouTube or on WhatsApp every day. And finally, there is something called relatable content. So relatable content means something which is relatable to you. So you may be a doctor, you may be a doctor and you might find healthcare industry content which is relevant to you. You might be an aspiring actor and you might find entertainment content relevant to you. So that is where the opportunity is. And as I said, it's a $400 billion possible industry in the next 2 or 3 years, which makes it one of the larger industries worldwide. And great example of this is especially after post-pandemic. You see what happened with OTT, right? Where suddenly everyone was home and the only entertainment that people had was to watch a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or a Hotstar. And that's where exponentially the amount of content required for OTT grew. Which means you have to start from writing a script, right? Because you can't do a television show or a OTT show without the script being written. So you can imagine the kind of explosion that has happened just in the last 3 years post the pandemic. So I am seeing some questions. I will answer them one by one. I've seen Nasreen's question, Gopal Krishna's question as well. Let's go ahead on this. So just on LinkedIn alone. Now I write frequently on LinkedIn. As Sugandha said, I'm one of the top 200 creators on LinkedIn as per Favicon last year's rankings. There are estimated 1 billion interactions that are happening every month on LinkedIn. So the total amount of published posts and the interactions, the impressions, the engagement, the comments, the forwards, shares, everything is 1 billion, a month, which is truly massive. It's massive to the extent that you can't even imagine what the scale and scope of this is. And this is just LinkedIn. It's not even taking into account what's happening on Instagram, Facebook, etc., right? So what are the careers in writing? If you were to, before we even jump into what AI is going to do, etc., a lot of people don't understand the varied nuances of writing. And when you say writer, for the first thing that you ask anyone on the road, or if somebody you go to a party and somebody asks you what you're doing, and you say, I'm a writer. The first impression that they get, most people, 9 out of 10 people, will be what kind of writing, right? So they will think, either you're a journalist or you're some kind of a novelist or an author, but they don't understand technically what a writer is, right? So, in the 70s, 80s, 60s, the impression, at least in India, of a writer used to be typically a jhola wala hota tha, na? Journalist. There used to be a jhola wala journalist who used to wear a bush shirt, trousers, pair of slippers, have a jhola, and he would be like a common man, like R.K. Lakshman's common man. He would be a writer. Today, the definition of a writer has, or even the impression or the perception of a writer has taken a vast turn. Today, you have 20-year-old kids writing, right? Today, you have 25-year-old Gen Zs sitting at home with a laptop and writing. So it is the whole game has changed in terms of the age of writers, in terms of the kind of writers there are. So hence, what are the careers in writing? Now, if you go through different, there were probably about 40 to 50 different, if you really slice it down into blocks, there are close to 40 to 50, maybe even more kinds of writers. But I am focusing on 4 of them, essentially, the bigger chunk of writers. And then there are 8 or 9 other writers, writing possibilities as writers, which we will dwell upon. But there are many more than what I'm going to be talking about. I mean, it really is dependent on how you perceive writing. So the first big writer in terms of a large chunk of writing is copywriting, right? So that is what I do. That's what I've been doing for the last 25 years. So a lot of people don't know what a copywriter is, or they may have heard of what a copywriter is. But a copywriter is somebody who works in advertising and is specializing in producing content or ads that encourage people to buy a product or a service. So the whole job of a copywriter is to write to sell a brand or a product. And where does this copywriter work? Mostly in advertising agencies, which are mainline, which means that you're doing television, you're doing radio, you're doing outdoor, you're doing press, print, etc. Or today with digital. So there are digital-only agencies which create copy and concepts and creative for social media, which is all your social media channels, assets rather. And you could even be a freelancer or a consultant. It doesn't stop you today from being a freelance copywriter or a consultant copywriter, as they call it. And who is the client for copywriters? So if you're in an advertising agency, or if you're a freelancer, or you're working in a digital environment, your main client, or at least your go-to person, as they say, is usually the marketing head of a brand. So all brands have a marketing department. The marketing determines what kind of marketing spends have to be done, what are the kind of projects that they want to spend on, what are the brands they want to highlight, and then the agency or the writers and the art directors. There's obviously art directors, there are planners, there are a lot of people in an advertising agency, or in an agency rather, and they determine how the thrust of the ad is going to be, what kind of campaign is needed, and what does a copywriter need. Now, this is where a lot of hairs are split, because there's always this debate, copywriting and content writing. What is content? What is copy? Is copy the same as content? Is content the same as copy? I think we can argue this till the cows come home, but copywriting is a very, very specific discipline for which you need not just a command of language, but you need great observation skills. You got to look at consumers very closely. You got to understand consumer psychology, consumer emotion, selling psychology, a lot of marketing, and basically it's got to be, as they say, you got to write from the heart, one heart to the other heart. It's a conversation that you have between people. So the best copywriting at the end of the day comes from the fact that can you sell the product in such a way that people want the product, right? So there's this lovely saying that, when you see an ad, you shouldn't have a feeling that this is a great ad. It should leave you with a feeling that this is a great product. It's something I want in my life. So that's what a copywriter does, essentially. I've just given one example. This is a very famous press ad, which was done for KFC, where they used the KFC differently to say FCK. And the reason they did this is because they were actually sorry about something that had happened at KFC. So if you look at the concept itself, the way the copy is written, this is what a copywriter does in an advertising agency. So that's the first block of a slightly what I call a bigger writer in terms of one of the bigger writing jobs. The second part, which is now becoming very, very big these days, is ghostwriting. So again, a lot of people don't understand what ghostwriting means. They think, some of them, you'll be surprised how many people actually think it really means literal what it means. But basically, a ghostwriter is anyone who writes content, any kind of content, whether it is a blog, whether it's a script, whether it's a LinkedIn post, whether it's a book, but it is done for somebody else. So it's a client who wants to publish under his or her own name, either doesn't have the time for it or doesn't have the writing skills for it, but enlists or gives that job out to a ghostwriter. And for example, typically we used to write biographies, right? Previously there were biographers who would write biographies. It's a extended version of a biography, where the ghostwriter is anonymous. You don't know who has written it, but you assume the person, for example, as the CEO of a company comes up with a book, you assume the CEO has written it. It's not really necessarily the case. It may have a professional writer who's helped the CEO craft the entire book, or even write the entire book actually, with just inputs from the CEO. Where does the ghostwriter work from? Today, technology, laptop. You can be sitting in a coffee shop. You can be sitting at home. You can be sitting anywhere. So it's a work from anywhere kind of situation. Who do you ghostwrite for? Any person of repute. It could be an influencer. It could be a celebrity. It could be a sports star. It could be an executive. But somebody who wants to tell a story but doesn't necessarily have the time or the skills to tell that story. And what is the most important sort of ingredient of a good ghostwriter? You've got to be able to manage content. So your communication skills have to be excellent because you have to write like somebody else. You got to get into the shoes of the person you're writing for, and which then calls for great editing and communication skills. So this is where ghostwriting is. It's hugely growing these days. There's a lot of it. LinkedIn is a great example. Again, you'll see a lot of ghostwriters there. And if you look at overall in terms of, sorry, just 1 second. My bad. If you look at, the kind of ghostwriting jobs today, there are, like I said, memoirs and autobiographies. It's a big thing today. Public figures don't have the time, so they enlist a ghostwriter to do it. You can write a novel, you can write short stories, you can write business copy, you can write anything, technically anything and everything. But essentially, it's the first 2 things or 3 things, where you're writing a memoir, autobiography, a post, an expertise book, or a novel. And that's when most of the ghostwriters see their sort of skills coming in through. The third kind of writer, which is again a third very important part of today's communication, is the script writer, right? Script writing. So again, I'll make a point here that, it's not necessary that one writer can be all. There are very few writers who are able to or have the skills to write across the board. Most times we are seeing more and more today that specialist writers are the way things are going today, because it's extremely difficult to write in so many different genres. If you can, wow, I mean, amazing. You'll have a great career ahead of you. But each of these sort of silos has its own demands. It has its own variables, and which is why the better you stick to what you feel is, you're better off as a writer, and focus on that. That will definitely help. So, scriptwriter, by definition, is somebody who writes scripts. Now, that could be for anything. It could be a television serial. For example, you want to work for Balaji and you want to write a soap. You have an idea for the next big Saas Bahu serial, for example. Or you want to write a movie. So you want to write the next. Shah Rukh's had a big hit with Pathaan. Maybe you want to write Pathaan too. You can approach Siddharth Anand with the script, for example. Today, podcasting is big. So a lot of people are having their own podcasts. And again, technology has put this in your hands today. You can create your own content left, right, and center. And the traditional advertising script writer is also there. Somebody who does scripting for ads, which you see on television or on YouTube these days. I mean, not many people use television these days for ads. Again, where do you work from? Either you work from anywhere you are, or you work with an agency, or you work with a production house. A lot of production houses have their own writers. They enlist writers. For example, Dharma Productions, Karan Johar, he has a set of writers who works for him, and they usually are part of a bureau or a desk, which is part of the production house. So they handle all the writing that happens across films or different things that Dharma is producing, for example, like that. Or different bigger production houses have their own list. Even OTT channels, for example, Netflix, Amazon, Prime, etc. They have their own in-house creative teams. They have their own in-house writing teams as well. So that's where you can also pitch yourself if you have it. And who is your client in this case? If you're doing it for a business side, it's usually somebody who's the head of content or marketing. And if you're doing it on the entertainment side, it's usually a producer or director. These are the 4 basic clients that you have. You can pitch it either way, left or right. And here, what happens is, it's not just the ability to be observant or to write emotionally, but you definitely need to be a storyteller. You need to be able to craft a story. You need to know the journey of a story. You need to know the protagonist, the antagonist, what is the journey. If you can write dialogues over and above that, fantastic. If you can write a screenplay over and above that, even better. There is a difference between a script and a screenplay and a shooting script, right? So a story is just a story. It's for example, I have a story of a spy who has to go and thwart the ambitions of somebody against the country. That's a story. What you see on screen or what's going to unfold on screen is what is a screenplay. That's what a screenplay writer does. So he or she actually takes the story and then breaks it up into scene by scene, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? How do I keep the suspense going? How do I keep the action going? That's the screenplay writer. Then the dialogue writer could be the same guy, could be somebody completely else. It's somebody who adds the punch in terms of the dialogues. And dialogue writing is an extremely specialized skill. You really need to know your, it depends on the tonality because every character speaks differently in the film. So you've got to understand the characters as well. So it's a whole lot of things that you need to be a scriptwriter. Again, explosive industry today, across the board. A lot of people are getting into it. So it's big these days. So like I said, you could be doing an ad for Fevicol, which you scripted, Fevicol being one of the most famous ads that India has done. You could be a writer on Lagan, for example. You could be writing Mirzapur tomorrow, for example. So it's a vast field again, a lot of stuff. The fourth is what today's world is calling content writing. Now, it's a vast field in itself, right? Because there are many niches within it. You could be a technology writer, you could be a food writer, you could be a sports writer. Today, people want to work for Wisden and cover cricket or the IPL, they write about it. You could write about Web3, you could be a specialist cryptocurrency writer, for example. So any travel is huge, for example, right? Travel writing. You could be a photojournalist also within that. So it's a huge plethora of content. Anything that is content in terms of educating the masses, in terms of reaching out information through your writing, that becomes content writing. Again, you can work from anywhere here. It don't need to necessarily be in an office or work in a content company. But your clients again will vary. It will either be a head of content or it will be a head of marketing across media. And here what happens is you really need to be master. You need to have that knowledge and mastery of the subject. So for example, if I want to become a sports writer, even within sports writing, I could be a cricket writer or a tennis writer or a hockey writer, for example. Then I really need to know my sport, right? I need to know cricket. I need to be passionate about it. I need to get my stats correct. I need to have my facts and figures right. I need to follow the game. So that is where you need to have a certain amount of mastery and a deep dive into that field. But again, hugely today, and the best part about content writers is that you can do it with your day job, right? You do see a lot of people who are their day job is different. You could be in a bank, you could be a professional MBA, marketing, whatever, and you could be writing by the side. A lot of people are doing it today. So nothing stops you from becoming a writer. I always say that if you do feel you have the talent and the time for it and the ability to communicate, you should definitely be a writer. It's a very, very rewarding, and it's not just for the money or for the success or what you see on LinkedIn today. I earn 7 figures, 8 figures. If you want to get into money, there are many ways of making money. Writing, yeah, you can make money, but the idea of being a writer is to be able to express what you want to express in the way that you want to express it, right? There should be some joy that you get from the process as well. So these are the 4 bigger sort of umbrellas under the larger umbrella of writing. There are 7, 8 other ones. For example, you can be a novelist or author. Nothing is stopping you. In this case, you have only one client, which is you to begin with, because you got to write the novel as per what you like. Then later on, of course, the publishing house becomes your client. There are social media managers who are also writers. Today social media is huge. They have to manage the entire plethora of social media assets. So you could be writing across the board. There are internal communication specialist writers. So you have PR writers, for example, corporate communication writers, for example. So you could join a company and completely manage the internal communications or even the external communications from time to time. Of course, there is the traditional journalist today who's also become a TV journalist, who's also become a web journalist, who's also become any kind of journalist today, or also called an article writer. Then you have grants and speech writers. You'll be surprised at how many people are actually being able to write speeches for politicians today, or speeches for leaders or deans or larger celebrities, for example. It's a big field. I mean, I have done one in the past where I was told to write a speech for someone. It was an interesting exercise because I'd never done it before. Then, of course, you have transcription writers. Transcription writers are people who take a piece of a podcast, for example, and then transcribe the entire content into bite-sized information for everyone. Then, of course, there are translators, language writers. It's not just English and Hindi. At the end of the day, there are so many languages worldwide. Mandarin is big, Russian is big. Even in India, we have so many languages. So if you're good at one or two languages, French is big, for example, you could definitely then become a translator or a language writer. And then the last one, which we're seeing again a lot of people today, which is your sort of life coaches for professionals, right? These are people who are writing, like Ankur Warikoo, for example, or some of the bigger names, for example, Tony Robbins, for example, who actually are positioning themselves as life coaches, who then write content or write stuff that is specifically for professionals, right? So it could be anti-stress stuff, it could be motivational stuff, it could be life lessons, whatever. So these are basically the 4 big, and then the 8 slightly smaller. And I don't want to compare one against each other, but the slightly smaller ones. And there are many other forms of writing. I mean, it really is a huge plethora of stuff. But these are the possible careers. Now, all of them at the end of the day boil down to one thing: whether you have the command of language, whether you are ready to do the hard work, whether you are good at research, for example, and whether you are able to assimilate what you want to say effectively, and somebody who reads it finds value in it. At the end of the day, that is the proof of the pudding. So I'll give you an example. I put these 2 gentlemen down. Obviously, I think all of you know who they are. The guy on the left obviously is Chetan Bhagat. The person on the right is obviously, do you know anyone? Who is the person on the right? You can put in your answers down there. It's Amish Tripathi, right? So now, what is interesting about both these gentlemen is that one, they were, they're very successful. Obviously, they're 2 of India's most successful writers. Chetan Bhagat has created his own niche in After 5 Point Someone, and Amish Tripathi has been big with his mythological writing. But the interesting part about both of them is that both of them started their journey as writers very late in life. So they're both investment bankers. They both come from a very different background, and then they became writers. Which also means that you could be 30, you could be 40, you could be 45, you could be 50. There is no age for writing. You could get up at 70 tomorrow, and if you're of sound mind, body, and have an idea to share and a script to share or anything of that sort, it is really that is where this is, the nub of thing is. So I have always believed in this particular quote. I think I've held it very close to me, that when you're writing the story of your life, don't let anyone else hold the pen. I think this is where I feel writers need to be very honest to themselves about what is their voice, right? Because it's like a fingerprint. I cannot teach writing beyond a point. Anyone who can claim to teach writing you can teach basic processes. You can teach some amount of, like, for example, script writing. You can teach some amount of formulae, tips, structures, processes, etc. But at the end of the day, it's like your fingerprint, right? It is extremely unique to you, and I cannot expect to write like Salman Rushdie, or I cannot expect to write like Piyush Pandey, for example, in advertising. They are what they are. So I think the best way to approach writing is to not let anyone else hold your pen. Whether it's a different writer style that you're trying to emulate, whether it's a client dictating to you, whether it's your own mentor dictating to you, at the end of the day, you have to write. And I think this is where the difference between AI and us will emerge, right? And that's where I go to the second part of my sort of conversation before we take the questions. So, having said all of that, there is still this very large elephant in the room that we are all talking about these days, and it's getting bigger by the day. But before this, anyone knows what this slide is all about JWST and the first pictures of a planet outside our solar system? Anyone can put it in the chat. Do you know what the reason why I put this slide in here? It's something to do with the elephant in the room, which is AI. Let me wait for a second if anyone answers. Anyone knows the context of this particular thing? Yes, Shishir has correctly identified it. This was the error that was made by Bard. Bard is the new AI software that Google has launched. They had the launch yesterday or day before. I think it was yesterday, right? And one mistake that came out to the software, one of the answers, has wiped out more than $100 billion from Google's net worth. Now, this is a great example of why AI is not yet ready. Yes, AI is there. AI is definitely going to get better and better. But how much of it will make a difference to us? And I'll tell you why it's not immediately going to make a difference. See, we are today talking about the two big AI platforms that have been launched for writing, right? One is ChatGPT, which has been there for 4 to 5 months close to. And of course, now Google with Bard, we don't know which way it's going to take. And then there'll be others in the line as well. We're seeing this in design as well, with Mid Journey there, with DALL-E there, where people are using these tools and these apps to sort of create art, design, etc. So the other side of writing, the other side of the creative spectrum, if I were to put it that way. And these systems are getting more and more intelligent. They will keep getting more intelligent, obviously. But will it reach a point where it threatens us? There are different theories for this. If you look at the theory of singularity, at one level, artificial intelligence will keep getting so much more better that it will reach a point of singularity where it will not need anything else but itself to survive, right? You can debate it that way on a philosophical level almost. But for me, I think the most important question of this question, which is staring at us in our face today, will writers lose to AI, right? Everyone's talking about it. A 20-year-old kid is talking about it. Me at almost 50, I'm talking about it. The chat is on, right? There's a lot of chatter about ChatGPT and Bard, etc. I still think not till we have high. Okay, and we have AI, but there is HI, high. And what is high? High is the ability for us as human beings to talk to people. Look, at the end of the day, AI is an interface. It's an interface between you and a machine. And the machine is going to collate stuff out of a hell of a lot of sources from the internet, right? But what do we have? We still have the ability as humans to break a conversation. I still can go to a consumer and say hi. I can still go to another person and say, hi, how was your food? Hi, how was your dinner? Hi, how was your travel? Hi, how was your trip? Hi, how was your whatever, right? The HI is still the human intelligence. We still have that. Until there is that ability to bring out emotions in our own way. Because see, what ChatGPT is throwing up right now, of course, you can use it for research. You can use it effectively for research. You can even effectively use it to create a lot of stuff. But the more and more I have been reading what ChatGPT is being generating, and I'm yet to try Bard, hopefully will. I see that it's lacking that dots, connecting of dots. What human beings do creatively is connect dots. You think out of the box. You are able to put in disparate threads together and weave a carpet out of it, right? That is still not there, I feel, yet for AI. So till that happens, keep saying hi. AI will hopefully be there in the background to help you. Who will suffer? The only people who really will suffer are people who are, in my opinion, not skilled writers. Because what will happen is they will fall prey to using AI way too much and above. But the experienced writers, the people who are talented and who have the years of experience or the skills, they will know how to tame the animal. They will know how to use AI like a horse, to better themselves and what they're offering as writers. So I don't think we should feel threatened at the moment. We should look at it as an ally. Eventually, nobody knows 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, how the world is going to be. 30 years back, we didn't know the internet is going to happen, right? Today, we're already talking about AI. 30 years down the line, it may be something else. So at the moment, till we have the HI with us, we should be fine as writers. And I come to the last slide of what I feel differentiates us. This is, of course, the legendary Mr. Kamal Hassan. And what he's doing there on screen is what is the essence of a good writer. And what comes from Indian, from our roots in India, which is Navras, right? If you study dance, especially Indian classical dance, you will see that there are 9 emotions, right? Whether it is Shringar, beauty, whether it's Hasya, humor, whether it's Karuna, which is compassion, whether it's Raudra, anger, Veera, which is bravery, Vibhatsa, which is disgust, Adbhut, which is surprise, Bhayanak, which is fear, and Shant, which is calm. All these 9 emotions are what define your writing. If you were to bring as a writer, if you were to tap into the Navras, any one of these or all of them, at different points in your writing, you will outwrite AI. Because an AI cannot think in these Navrasas, right? He has only one rasa, he or she, or it has only one rasa, which is the ability to churn out information. But can it tap into compassion? Can it tap into joy? Can it tap into fear? Can it tap into, Shringar, for example? It can't. Not at the moment, at least, right? So I think till we have the ability to tap into this Navras that we are as human beings, we are always going to be 9 steps Navras ahead of the AI. And on that positive note, I'd like to leave this question session open now to everyone. Let me just see if there are anything. I'll stop sharing my screen as well so that it's easier to converse it. So we have around 20 minutes more, so we can take in some questions. Gopal Krishna has asked here, technical writers looking to wear hats of script writer, subtitles or OTT platform. Yeah, you can technically write for anything as long as you're good with the writing part of it. He's also asked, when you get AI to write, is it not going to be plagiarism that creeps in? Of course it will be, because see, at the end of the day, the client also has access to the same question. Anyone has access to it, right? Now, you cannot technically, there is ChatGPT, you cannot use that copy technically. It's actually copyrighted under OpenAI. So if you're actually using that, you're actually using it to your detriment. There is a copyright clause even on what you create from ChatGPT. So, and plagiarism is easily found out today. You have a lot of tools, anti-plagiarism tools. There's so many ways you can find out if you're cogged a piece of copy. So I don't think you should really look at it to take the exact thing and paste it. It's always better to take the inspiration from it, take some direction from it, but then add your own navras, as I put it, add your own rust to it at the end of the day. Nasreen has asked, to tap AI in revenue in writing, do you need to have AI experience in industry or academics, or can you do the research? I think it's a question of how you use the horse. You don't necessarily need to be a part of the industry, but you definitely need to know how to tame it and use it to your advantage at this time. Kanika has asked, what kind of writing brings in money career-wise? If I've been a writer in the digital field for 7 years, I am not an influencer. Kanika, if I knew the answer to this question, I would be sitting in a first class of Emeritus right now, honestly. But even after 25 years, it's not easy to talk about money for writers. It is really about what you do and what kind of a niche you create. Some people really are able to create that niche and leverage from it. Some are not, right? So it's a tough question, but keep money important. It's always there. It should be there at the back of the head, and whatever you're doing is for remuneration. Don't worry so much about how much you're earning. So I think keep updating, upskilling, as they put it, the word that is prevalent these days, and that's how you go about it. Vijay Juneja is asking, what is the need to a writer, especially in ghostwriting as a copywriter or content? Is work from home the new zone? What are the lots of questions there. Okay, so again, there are, the idea of being a writer is that writing is the cheapest profession in the world, because all you need is the Pentium here, right? So you don't need anything else. You just need your head. You need some way to convey what's in your head. Either it's a piece of paper or a tablet or a digital screen. So you can work from anywhere, honestly. As long as you're delivering and your clients are clear about what is happening, great. Yeah, I think you should also just post it in the Q&A box, guys, because it's tough to go between the chat and the Q&A. Soumya has asked, where do proofreaders figure, and can proofreading itself? Yes, it is. I mean, it used to be, Soumya. Proofreaders were very necessary at one point in time. Today, there are many tools and software that take care of it. But I have worked with some very senior proofreaders, and even today, what the human eye can detect in terms of being able to manage clarity and content, correction in that sense, I still feel if you're a good proofreader, you can make the money on it. What else? Shishir has asked, how can writers show that what people see as written communication is actually the end of a process? Yeah, very good point, Shishir. See, I think a lot of people think they confuse writing with words, right? Words equal to writing. I don't think that's the case. Writing is the conceptualization. Writing is as much thinking as the process of writing, right? So you could be working in an advertising agency, you could have actually cracked an idea without writing a word, right? You could have cracked Fevicol, ऐसा जोड़ लगाए अच्छे से अच्छा ना तोड़ पाए, without even writing those words. So the idea of being a writer is not just words. The idea of writing is to think, and if you're able to bring that thinking to the table with words, without words, you should be good enough in this industry. Rahul has asked, how do you differentiate good copy, especially when your agency suggests one to be apt? I mean, see, there is no good copy or bad copy. There is effective copy. I don't think you should be qualitatively judging copy. Copy at the end of the day is for a purpose. It's to sell a product. Now, sometimes you may come up with a line which says Hoodie Baba for an ad, right? There was a motorcycle sold with Hoodie Baba. Now try rationalizing Hoodie Baba to me, but it's a catchy line. It worked. So there is no one rule which says good copy or bad copy, as long as it's effectively selling the product that it is meant for. One second. Where do I go now? Yeah, Suchismita is asking, ChatGPT does not have a very high quality language. Will you still suggest? Yeah, see, it is preliminary. It is both. I mean, ChatGPT is 4-5 months old. Bard has just started. We'll see how it evolves. And I think right now, at least for the next year, 2 years, till we have clarity on how it's going, it's best to use these AI to research to give you some sort of ideas if you're in a creative block, for example. But don't be over-reliant on copy-pasting what you're reading there. A classic example of what happened with Bard yesterday, right? They got the facts wrong. Now imagine, and you lost 100 billion. Now imagine you do that with your client and the client is paying you 50,000 rupees. You're going to lose 50,000 rupees in that transaction. So better to always have your own research done and rely on your writing skills more than the ChatGPT or AI or whatever. Aritra has asked, can a person be both a content writer and a copywriter? Yes and no. In my opinion, humble opinion, and this is a controversial statement I'm making, copywriters can become content writers not necessarily can become copywriters. Copywriting is a far more focused discipline. It requires a lot more of the marketing sense. Content, I can write sport content, right, without even knowing cricket, for example, just having a little knowledge of cricket. But in advertising, you really need to know what you're writing. You really need to be able to sell. So as long as you're able to take that mantle on yourself, you can do it. Nikhil is asking, can you put some light on digital marketers' career with the evolution of AI? Very tough, Nikhil, for me to predict what careers will be in this, because it's still a very, very nascent and evolving stage right now. I think there will be a lot more clarity before the end of the year itself. I see a lot of different discussions happening before the end of 2023, because I don't think it's only going to be Bard and ChatGPT. There are a lot more on the anvil, and I'm assuming they will keep getting better. So we will probably have a better answer towards the end of the year. Shruti has asked, what are the best practices to become a good writer for beginners? Well, I think start by identifying whether you want to be a writer. One, because I think writing doesn't mean just the advantage of being good at languages or being good with words. It's finally what you do with those words, right? So language is not that I need to know 73,000 words from the dictionary. I sometimes need to know just 3 words. I love you. And that is as precise as you can get, right? I don't need to say I cherish you so that you are over the moon. So, that's not the idea of writing. The idea of writing is to get straight to the point. So as a beginner, if you feel you have the ability to move me with your words, whether it is in any field as a writer, please go for it. Today you have the technology, you have all the means in the world to do it. So feel free. Sorry. Okay, Piali has asked, being a salesperson, we are into storytelling. How can I start making the writing crisper and articulately putting it into writing? I think who do we hear our stories from when we start our journeys in life? We hear it from our grandmother, from our mother. You think our grandmothers and our mothers put much thought into the way they told us stories? No. What they did is they told it with warmth. They told it with love. And they told it with a very clear, authentic way of imparting something to you as a child. And that is the best way to tell a story. The more we complicate storytelling as the story and telling, you are going to complicate yourself. The idea is, imagine that you are telling the story to somebody very intimate to you, your closest friend, your mom, your grandmother, whoever. It becomes more authentic, and then the story becomes more resonant. So definitely there is a little bit of technique in it, but if you're able to hold an audience, either orally or through your words, you should be able to tell a story properly. Okay, next one. A lot of questions still coming in. Okay, how do you maintain, this is from Sahil Manutyagi, how do you maintain the level of creativity in writing? Do you get a phase of stagnancy? I think every writer goes through stagnancy, every writer goes through a creative block, every writer goes through a Monday syndrome. It's bound to happen. I think the idea here is how do you refresh yourself mentally? Switch on to something else. Your influences as a writer are coming from diverse things, right? One influence is coming from people itself, from situations, because you're observing things. You can get your influences from music, you can get it from food, you can get it from travel, you can get it from movies, you can get it from sports, you can get it from a conversation you had with somebody in the train. So whenever you're in a creative block, I think the best way to first is to breathe, saas le lo thoda, and second is not worry about the block itself. It's a question of being able to go around the block, and for that to happen, first you need to start walking. So just go for a walk; you'll feel better. Okay. Raman, any copywriting course you recommend to start in? Okay. See, there are a lot of courses, Raman. There are not many professional courses these days. There is an Institute of Copywriting which is there in Delhi. There are some people on LinkedIn who are giving copywriting courses. But I am still of the opinion that there is enough free resources out there. You can go to YouTube, type in learn copywriting, you'll find a million videos. There are just so many resources today on the internet. The idea is not to confuse yourself with too much information. The idea is finally to still know this is what I want to do, and if you want to do it, then you will find a way to do it, right? So look at buying the copybook, for example, DNAD, which had 32 writers who had written best copywriters in the world of all time. Study their work, study their processes, and then follow a few good writers on LinkedIn. A lot of them who are giving a lot of tips from time to time. There are plenty of them. There's Eddie Schleiner, for example, Shlomo Gletchen, for example, Dave Harland, for example. So there are a lot of people who you can follow in terms of Dana Kalkovich is a fantastic example of how she puts in her thoughts with copy. So definitely you can do that. Hemant, some tips to improve the quality of your ideas, especially when working. Okay, see, quality is entirely dependent. Writing output is completely dependent on what you're inputting, and that is the sum game of it. You are born with a certain talent to be a writer. You can hone it or better it only by being influenced. The more your sort of landscape of influences, the better that you will be as a creator, or better your quality of work will be. For example, if you're only good at 2 or 3 things, I don't think you will really. A writer has to be quirky. Writer quirky hona chahiye. Writer has to be very, very self-deprecating. Writer has to be porous. No, you should be able to laugh at yourself as a writer. The more you're aware of your frailties, I started my session by saying that, right? More than your strengths. If you're aware of your weaknesses and your frailties, and you're absorbed as a sponge, you will become a better writer. There's no other formula for it. Any other questions? Let me see. We have about 2 minutes more for questioning, and then we can wrap. Where am I now? Anything that you done with it? Sugandha, you see anything which I have forgotten?
No, I think.
Yeah.
Sanket is just asking about your progression story briefly, if you would like to share that.
Sure. So I basically commerce graduate. I dabbled in chartered accountancy. I joined a bank. I hated every moment of those 6 months I worked there. Joined a college magazine in Bombay called Jam, which was a fun time because all I had to do was watch movies and hear music and meet people like Lucky Ali and write about food, music and movies. Thought that was interesting 25 years back. Then got into advertising because somebody said advertising is a great place for you to go because you only like being in t-shirts and shorts and slippers. And that's how I got into advertising. And I've never seen anything beyond advertising in the last 25 years. That's been my progression.
Great. Thank you so much, Shantesh. It was a very informative, very interesting session. I'm sure it will help a lot of our learners here. And thanks to all the learners also for attending and for all the questions.
I just want to say one thing. I think it's very important for everyone to know this. And it's something which has really helped me in my journey. Think like a child and evaluate like an adult, right? When you're a small child, you're not afraid of consequences, right? You just go with the flow. When you're an adult, you start putting the consequence cap on. So always when you're thinking, right, think like a child. You'll come up with 500 ideas. Then you evaluate like an adult. From the 500 ideas, you'll find 5 that work for you. But if you do it the other way around, if you start thinking like an adult, you'll only have 5 ideas. And you'll evaluate like a child, you'll not even have 1 left. Right? So thoda bacche, dil to bachcha hai ji, na? That song is very important. Dil ko bachcha rakho kabhi bhi. Very important.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Then Uh, all right, then on that note, let's wrap this up. Thank you so much once again, Shantesh, for all your time. And
Thank you. Thank you everyone who came in today. Very nice of you to spend time with me, and I hope it helped. I mean, 1 hour is not enough always to pass on gyan, as they put it, but I hope in some way it has helped you. And I think joy. Keep the joy of writing. Don't worry about the processes. The happier you are as a writer, the better you will. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.